Good evening, Terry.
I own a motel not too far from you, and you'd be welcome to spend the night in one of the empty rooms if you'd like.
It burns! Oh, it burns! And I'm the devil.
You've just been through a traumatic experience.
You need to let your body heal.
What? It's not Zoe in there.
I went somewhere.
That was a dream.
It was hell.
Jeez. Zoe, we can help you.
It's too late for that. You have no idea what you've done. But you will.
All right, and here we are.
At the Necronomicast, we are interviewing movie producer Cody Zwieg. Cody is the producer, or one of the producers, of the latest movie that we've checked out, The Lazarus Effect. He's also been involved with some Wes Craven projects, The Last House on the Left. He's also been involved with Hills Have Eyes, Random Acts of Violence, Apollo 18. We can go on, but let's listen to the man himself. Cody in L.A., how are you, sir?
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thanks for being on our show. Cody, we all saw the film, and we enjoyed it. And I want to kind of get into a little bit. We all do. Can you kind of explain how you became involved with horror films and producing a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't plan on working on horror movies. I always loved them. I was thinking about this as I was driving home tonight. When I was a little kid, sorry guys, we're starting a little way back.
No, go all the way back. We don't care.
All the way back.
But when I was literally kindergarten, probably, there were these series of books, and I think they had like orange. It was like orange and black, and they kind of synopsized every like classic monster movie. Mm-hmm. There's like a Dracula book and a Frankenstein book and a Mad Scientist book, and God, I wish I knew what they were. But they were these thin little books for kids, and had photos of of the old black and white horror movies, and then talked about each one and all the sequels and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm trying to look real quick on Facebook, and I'm going to stop. I actually liked their page of those movies, those black and orange. There was the Wolfman,
right?
Yes, exactly. And we fought over those in the elementary school library to see who's going to check them out. So I know exactly what the hell you're talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. And if there was one that was a little rarer, that was tough to get your hands on. I mean, this is how much I love. I'm not scared by much anymore. But I remember being a kid, and I had the Dracula book, and I left it in the living room because I was too afraid to actually have the book, which just had Bela Lugosi on the cover, in my room. I remember thinking, I'm leaving it out here. But as I grew up, I love things that scared me. I have pretty varied tastes, but I always went back to horror. And my parents weren't overly strict, but they wouldn't let me watch Psycho until I was 12. That was a big thing. I lobbied for years because someone had said that it was too violent. My parents hadn't even seen it, but they were just like, nope, you can't watch that one. But they would let me read anything I wanted, which was a huge mistake. So, in fourth grade, I read The Exorcist, Amityville Horror, for all that stuff, which is in your imagination as opposed to on the screen, and burn through Stephen King.
Well, those could scare you more than movies and TV too.
Absolutely. I mean, what your mind can create. I remember reading The Exorcist and asking my mom, God, I don't even. There were certain things that Reagan was saying that I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'll bet.
You know, and so going to my mom and being like, "What is this?" Pointing to it in the book, and like, yeah, exactly. But so I always, you know, was drawn toward darker material. I think as a person, I like. I like books and films and television that provokes people. Maybe not always thought provoking, but I want people to walk away with a reaction of some sort. And after college, I went to film school out here at USC, and it was a big leap from South Dakota, and then they kind of treat you to love classic films, and that's great. And I ended up working different jobs in the film industry, and a job opened up working for Wes Craven's producing partner. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where, I had another job opportunity, and a good friend who's now my wife said, "Look, Wes Craven always makes movies. You should go work at a company that's always making something." And so I went there, and when I told my mom I was working there, she was like, "Oh, well, of course, like, you always loved that crap, It's that kind of like." And for me, it really wasn't. It really was to work for Wes. This was in 2001. I always saw him, as a filmmaker with a point of view who happened to make genre movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you talk about him and John Carpenter kind of in the same breath. And, John Carpenter maybe has some more varied stuff, but when those guys are hitting, regardless of the genre, it works, and it's a film. They've made films that are so in some ways personal or so much their own, that is just really extraordinary. But nothing against like Hal Ashby's one of my favorites too. So it's all those guys. But I ended up working for Wes for about 9 years.
So let me interrupt you here real quick, just because
of course.
We had a great conversation with Tommy McLaughlin, who is the writer and director of Friday the 13th Part 6, and he was he kind of related the same background as you. He loved the gothic old horror movies, and he talked about that. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate you saying that. Like, you were drawn to it at an early age. It wasn't something that you're looking forward to, making a quick buck with. I mean, you had a really love of horror movies, which resonates with the three of us here. Now, I'm guessing that you are in your late 30s, early 40s?
I turned 40 on Monday.
Nice, nice.
So you are right on.
Well, the reason I bring that up, I can't imagine what it would be like if I'm going to work the first day at a job, and across from the table is Wes Craven. Well, tell us about the first time.
I want to know before that even.
Go ahead.
What was on your resume? How did you get that gig?
Yeah, right. Okay.
What was on your resume that made them go, you know what? I want him.
Yeah, this is pretty good, because it's one of those things. Like, my experience, I was applying to be an assistant, so my experience had been varied. That I had been an assistant at a studio. I had worked on a few films as an assistant, so I could do the job. But two things were just coincidental. One, I learned later that the woman who hired me specifically wanted a female assistant. So, I guess I somehow passed. And the assistant who I was replacing saw my resume. She was going to turn me down because, and I think this is maybe illegal, but she was like, "Oh, we don't want to bring in too many guys." But she saw my resume, and on my resume was the name of a producer who I had worked with on a movie called The Cider House Rules. Mm-hmm. And that producer, I was just the production secretary, just working in the production office on that.
Mm-hmm.
But that producer happened to be the assistant who I was replacing's high school drama teacher.
Oh, really?
Geez, small world, huh?
I had no idea. And she that's what jumped out at her, and she immediately called that woman because they hadn't talked in 10 years, but they'd talked infrequently, but they hadn't talked in a long time, and so she said, "Oh, I just got this resume from this kid," and that's why I got the job. It is you could never plan for anything like that. Maybe they would have brought me in anyway, but it was a total kind of luck thing, and then for me, it was also like I was just looking for an interesting place to work, where they were really making movies, and I had seen all of Wes's movies, and I had one of probably the best movie-going experiences of my life watching Scream the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Nobody expected, spoiler alert, 20-some years later, but nobody expected Drew Barrymore to kill at the end, or in the beginning, I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah, it set the tone beautifully. So meeting Wes Craven, I can only imagine, like, if I met him now at a convention or something like that. But you're going to work for a guy that's considered one of the modern masters of horror, of the genre. And so what's it like? I mean, do you guys sit down over sushi and talk about, how you're going to chop somebody's head off? I don't know. I mean, what's it like, the day in life of a producer of a horror film in Hollywood?
I will tell you that there were dozens of times when we did sit around eating sushi and talk about different ways to have to kill people. Really, truly. Yeah. It sounds silly, but our office is on Sushi Row, and that was, there were definitely parts like that. But Wes is also, he was a philosophy professor and an English professor, and he's just a normal guy. I mean, he's not creeping around the office. He's not trying to scare people. I think, he obviously was able to tap into something that even he wasn't aware of in his subconscious, with Last House and Hills in the 70s. And I honestly think that, making films like that just shook people to their core, but also having a last name like Craven didn't hurt.
No,
right.
I
think that, but I don't know if you guys know much about his background, but he was raised very, I forget what religion it was, but it was very conservative religious, background. And he wasn't allowed to watch movies, like only Disney movies. And he talks about this, but that's the I think things turned around. The story he tells us, he went to go see a screening of To Kill a Mockingbird, which the church had denounced because it was it came from Hollywood, whatever. And he was just confused by how something that amazing could be at odds with the church, and then I think he almost ran into people from church or from his school as he was leaving the theater, and then of course was afraid of getting caught, and then kind of realized how ludicrous it all was, and then everything kind of changed. And it was the '60s, and so he's just he's a guy who really believes in character, believes in the value of storytelling, and looks to Greek tragedy for storytelling inspiration. You could never, you wouldn't talk to him about, classic horror movies in the way that some of us would, because he didn't have those references.
Right.
For him, it was Medea. Not the Tyler Perry, but it was dark, tragic, stories that came from the human psyche. So, but from a personal standpoint, he was like the professor.
Right.
He's just incredibly smart. Great sense of humor, and he's always been that way. At the same time, he knows who he is. You are dealing with a master of horror, and so if you get into certain conversations, and that's what's tricky too, working for someone like that is, what do you say to someone when you're arguing about story points when they've created two incredibly successful franchises? It's that can be tough, but
you would think he'd always be learning too. I would hope that if I was that way, that I'd hopefully be learning some new stuff all the time, and
definitely,
it's such a solid thing.
I say, and there is that. He's always been an inquisitive guy, and I think that's absolutely true.
And that makes for those geniuses.
Well, and any of those guys, you would better be able to back up what you're saying.
Right.
If you're going in, and that was, I think also it's as we get older. I'm not, I'm just getting there, I guess. But you don't want your time wasted, and I think that was the thing for him too. Was it better be important, and you better come prepared. But I'll tell you this. This is a weird story that I haven't really told many people, but I started working there a month before 9/11. And he had only been in the office a couple times because he had been out of town, and he came in shortly after 9/11 and gave everyone gas masks, which is a weird thing. But and at first I was like, oh, that is just bizarre. But it also was, like at the time we didn't know what was going on. We didn't, and his thing was he wanted to make sure that all of his employees were okay if something happened.
Right.
Take them home, and it was macabre, and we all kind of laughed about it. But he really did care about everybody at that company.
Wow. Yeah.
So we're talking here with Cody Zwieg. He is the producer of just a long list of movies here. Cody, can you tell us a little bit, what is your, like you get the call, you're going to be on this Lazarus movie, for example, or whatever else you're working on now, and you're signed on to be a producer. What is your day like? What's it like being a producer of a horror film?
It depends. I mean, every day is different, and every movie is different. With something like Lazarus, I was brought on by the studio, and because I'll have some projects where I come up with the idea, or the script comes to me through the writer or the writer's agent, and then I'm spending a lot of time, getting it to script phase. And with Lazarus, it was a found footage movie when it came to me, and I just done Apollo, and Apollo for me was a tricky experience because it went so quickly, and we built the moon in like 3 weeks, and I mean, talk about a unique experience, and that was trying to come up with scare beats, but working with NASA advisors and building the moon and using different kinds of technology. I mean, it was so much fun, but so crazy, and especially in post-production, I felt like there were times where our hands were tied because we couldn't use score. There's so many things that you can't do if you're really, committing to the form of found footage or faux documentary or whatever you want to call it. So I said, told the studio I'm not interested, and this shouldn't be found footage. And they came back to me and said, well, what if it wasn't? And then the conversation started. But that was, I would say, this is where it's not that glamorous. I still get to make movies, so I'm not complaining. But that then followed. What followed was a year of working with the writer to kind of reshape the script, and I would say I think like maybe 9 months later, our director came on board. And he brought another element that he brought in the element of her kind of crossing over. You guys have seen the film, but of the world kind of crossing, and Sarah Bolger's character being able to cross over kind of into Zoe's psyche in a way. And because David's big influence when we sat down with him, we met with a bunch of different directors, and David's influence was Akira. The anime film, and right, and so many people had so many different elements of the kind of surrealism that came from Akira, and we were on board, and the studio was on board, and
how many people have a hand in the script in deciding what to do with the script? Is that just a process? Because it's not like you and the writer are just sitting down going, yeah, I agree on that. There's got to be a bunch of people that it makes the rounds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and again, it depends. I would say, like on The Hills Have Eyes, it was probably not simple, but as easy as it gets. Not for the writers, for Hills and Last House, because Les owned the rights and we ran his company. So we hired a writer and worked with the director, and it was kind of the director, occasionally other producers, but maybe 4 or 5 people kind of going through and be like, okay, well, what happens if you put a hand in a garbage disposal? Although
I don't know those things.
I want to say the head in the microwave was not our idea. That came from the studio. It was a mandate.
Well, it's not that bad. Come on.
No, oh man. Okay. Well, see, the preview audiences were 50-50. If they had turned it down, then we would have cut it out. But it with Lazarus, at times. Because there were the producers that were brought on, or that came on because they represented the writer, and there were 3 people from that company. And then there was me, and then there was the 2 studio executives who left Lionsgate and then became producers, so there were 2 more. And then there was ultimately then Jason Blum came on board, and he has his executives. So you could be on the phone with the writer and at least half a dozen people.
Wow.
Lots of those kind of calls, and and then of course the studio. So there's a lot of layers, and it's a lot of wrangling and kind of keeping pieces together, and trying to kind of maintain certain elements of the script at work. For me, I do a lot as a producer. I'm the cheerleader. I put the team together. I will help find financing. That's now become more a part of my job. And I start at conception to the release of the movie. I've been fortunate enough to have worked, through every phase of most of the films that I have a credit on, and it definitely it's different every time. And sometimes you work with someone like a powerhouse like Bob Weinstein on Apollo 18, and you'll get the call late at night where suddenly he wants these major changes made, and you try and figure out how to do it. And yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And with that, we had Timur Bekmambetov also, and his execs. And Timur was great, but he had certain ideas, and so you try to keep it together. I'm rambling a bit, but I knew I'd get back to what my point was, which was that for me as a producer, it really kind of starts and ends with the director. And I think it's especially important in horror genre films, because we've all seen different horror movies, and the thing that I love about horror is that you usually can find, even in the worst horror movies, you'll get like a scene that's really great. There's something that you haven't seen before, or they're pushing things in certain ways, and so it's not a complete waste. Like a bad drama is just a bad drama. Same with bad comedy. Like I don't want to laugh once in a movie, but if you gotta, if you have one good scene, maybe I'll at least feel like I didn't waste 2 hours of my life. But
you haven't seen Zombie Lake yet, I take it.
Wait, which one? Which one?
Oh,
Zombie Lake from 1981.
We just did a.
Oh God.
We did we did kind of a Mystery Science Theater 3000 experience with that. And
nice.
Yeah, you listen to our podcast while you're watching the movie at the same time.
That's
you sync it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really fantastic.
Wow.
Cody, one thing that one thing that you touched on, and one thing that we've been talking about lately, a couple shows back, and we've been kind of talking about it over the past year, is the found footage genre. And I found it really interesting that you said that originally this movie was a found footage, and you were not interested. And from our perspective, we're guys that, we follow the trades, we follow, trailers, we follow news, the different websites, and so we hear about movies as they're being made or being released. And so then we watch the trends that you guys are working on, like 18, 24 months, ago. And when you said that you weren't really interested in making this movie as a found footage, where do you think found footage is kind of going right now? And or what turned you off from found footage? Is it because was you kind of said
this movie that you thought shouldn't be found footage?
Yeah, because you were saying earlier it sounded like, it was like, man, I can't use a score. Is it it seems to us on this side of the film that it's like an easy way to make a movie, but it sounds like from you, it sounds like it's almost harder to make that kind of movie.
Well, and that I think it's a common misconception here too. In fact, I think the reason why the script was written as found footage is because people would say, "Oh, well, it's you just put a camera somewhere and you just shoot it," and I think is much actually harder to create something because you can't fake angles. You can't create tension in the same way. Mm-hmm. And so if it doesn't work, if you don't have some of those kind of the nifty moments like even in like Paranormal 3 with the all the stuff in the kitchen as the camera on the fan panning back and forth.
We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, that one worked. That one worked.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of making found footage movies involves coming up with a gag.
Right.
And for me, that's just not as interesting. I mean, look, I've done this on every movie I've worked on, every genre movie. You do like a chart that shows where the scares are and if there are enough. And it started. Joel Silver, I think, used to do what he called whammo charts, and like every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, there had to be a whammo.
Yeah.
And we did the same thing. It didn't come from Wes. It came from some of the producers he worked with, where it was like, no, we need a scare here, and so it almost became mechanical. And with a lot of found footage, you don't get. You have to find other ways to bring out character. It's really difficult. The first day of Apollo 18, and by the way, we were shooting like we did crazy stuff. We used GoPros, but shooting in SD with some of them. We used old cameras where we damaged the film before putting it back into undeveloped film before putting it back in the old. We had a 16mm camera from the 60s. There were things that it was so much fun, but it was crazy. But that first day, you're just like watching something, and there's no real sense of how it's going to cut together. We had a brilliant editor, fantastic director who really worked hard at making that stuff work. And for example, Apollo, it's about the space mission, and there are cameras everywhere, and it makes sense. For Lazarus, it just was a way to put GoPros on people's helmets at the second half of the film and then have everybody run around screaming. And it just, there was no way to do anything cinematically interesting, I didn't think. Nice. But I would never rule out doing it again. Doing another found footage movie if it made sense. Have you seen The Conspiracy?
Say that again?
Have you seen the film The Conspiracy?
Conspiracy. No, haven't seen that one.
It's a Canadian film. I think it's called The Conspiracy. And it's about I guess they would maybe call it faux documentary, but it's about a documentarian who is interviewing this conspiracy nut, essentially. And they kind of, they think that this guy is completely, full of shit, and he ends up disappearing. And the things that he has been predicting seem to kind of started coming true. And then the camera crew starts digging into this conspiracy cult, whatever this guy had been talking about. And of course, things go from bad to worse. But like that, for my money, it was a brilliant way to make a found footage movie because the content calls for it. With Lazarus, it just never did. And really it came from the studio also at that time, thinking, well, found footage movies are huge. So, and we had said, and you guys have seen the movie, there's that first scene now that's, just a shitty camera angle. But,
the pig?
Yes, with the pig. I mean, when we did the rewrites, there was still probably like maybe 25%, what would be considered found footage, just so the studio felt better, so they could use it in marketing if they needed to. I don't think they did use any of it, but it came from a more cynical place. So I think there's a way to do it. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that it appeals to people at times. I don't know that people are going to pay $10, $15 to go see a movie that looks like it was shot on an iPhone. Right. But that's just the way the industry is going.
Yeah.
But there's some really great found footage stuff online. I mean, digital series and feature films too.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Lazarus Effect. Now we talked about kind of your role in some of this and kind of finding out about the movie. It's out now. It's been out. We've all seen it. What was some of the more, I guess, obstacles that you faced when you were producing this? Whether it was with special effects, was it with? And you said there was, of course, the story and getting the script completed. But once you guys were shooting, what was something that you thought was a pretty decent challenge?
Well, I'll tell you, and everybody says it every time, and I keep working with them, but dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Really?
Wow.
I'll tell you a challenge, and this is kind of like boring film 101 stuff, but we had these actors that we were I think very lucky to get, and that's where some of the reviews, frankly, I don't get them, because I think we, have a great team that started this movie. But Mark Duplass, he's in everything.
He's great.
We were lucky to get him, and Olivia. And Olivia's schedule was she was available the entire time to us, which was great. But Mark, I think we shot for like 5 weeks, and he wasn't available for the first week, so we had to move things around, and other actors weren't available, and those are the kind of things that drive you nuts, because you're never really shooting in order anyway.
Right.
But we had to jump around. You don't want to shoot, scenes with fire in the hallway with a little girl. You save that until like the second of last week. Like Last House. You shoot all the fun and easy stuff. You don't shoot the rape scene until week 2, week 3, when everybody's had time to to settle in and trust each other. And so we started, as we're scheduling this movie, we met this dog, and we just thought he was perfect, and we were so excited, and we thought, well, we'll get all the dog stuff, and we'll do all of that. And then we found out that the dog had commitments. And suddenly, we were not only moving around that, but the dog had like commercials or something else, and it wasn't 2 dogs. We were stupid in that case too. We thought, we didn't get several different dogs. We got one dog that we all loved, and it became a huge, huge pain. Now the dog was great, but also, you have to. It's like working with kids. You have to figure out how to coax them into doing what they're doing. So
and you did both. You worked with kids and animals in this one.
And Olivia Wilde.
Right, exactly. Well, there you go.
Yeah, see, all right. Give me the kids and the animals. No found footage and Olivia Wilde. Exactly. Come on.
I want to do a movie with babies and dogs on a boat out at sea.
Found footage babies.
Yeah, right.
Like home movies, cutesy home movies.
There you go.
But if it stars Olivia Wilde, all right, fine.
Cody, it's been great having you. It's been great having you here on the Necronomicast. I got another question for you, real quick. And before I get to it, I want to tell you that those orange and black books, I looked it up. They're the Crestwood House Monsters.
Yes.
Fuck yeah!
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah.
Oh my god, I gotta look this thing up.
Yeah, go on Facebook and like it, because that the Crestwood House Monsters, man. So
wow. All right.
What's next? What's next for Cody? What are you? And you probably can't tell us everything that you got your hand in, but is there you got a horror movie that maybe might pique our interest and pique our listeners' interests?
I got something that that I talked about today, that I met about today, that could go. I can't get into the details, but it's a big kind of supernatural. It feels like it's a ghost story, but then it becomes something kind of much darker that I'm really excited about. That could shoot this summer. But I also, I have about a dozen projects, and some of them are, more kind of straightforward horror. I'm putting a director on a project that I have about. It's a horror film that's set in a rehab recovery center, and kind of at the end of the world in a way. A virus has broken out and it's affecting everyone in different ways, and we're dealing with these people who have been completely isolated, and so that's something that
sounds like
that I'm excited about. I mean, we'll see. It's we'll see what happens with any of that stuff.
Right.
but yeah, I try to keep, you know, you can't rely on one movie at a time. And I like to do, you guys mentioned Random Acts of Violence, which was a $50,000 movie. You talk about, I mean, it was essentially a faux documentary, and that was something that I worked on to help a really talented director move forward. And hopefully we're going to be doing his next movie in London later this year. So, you know, so you got to keep busy. It's a fun, crazy business to stay busy in.
And it sounds like you're having all kinds of success. We've been talking to Cody Zwieg. He is a producer of Lazarus Effect, Random Acts of Violence, Apollo 18, which is streaming free, everybody, on Netflix right now. Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes, Hills Have Eyes too. Goes on and on and on. Cody, you've been fantastic, and thanks for, I mean, you're a busy guy, and to talk to us, we really appreciate your time and everything on the show.
Hey, Midwesterners, we got to stick together.
That's right. Because it's cold,
my
mainly.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we got to huddle together, Cody. This is how we do it. We are right now cuddling, zip spooning.
Well, guys, this has been great for me too. I really I appreciate it.
Excellent. All right. Well, stay on the line, but for all you listeners out there, thanks for joining us today on the Necronomicast. My name is Wayne.
This is Zip.
This is Brian.
And we'll see you next time on the Necronomicast.
You've been listening to the Necronomicast, a weekly podcast produced by Wayne Brecky, part of the Free Life Media Network. For show notes and other information, go to necronomicast.com.